The probe drifted through the cold darkness between stars for nearly 200 years before it found something interesting. It was a small machine, no bigger than a ground transport vehicle, but it carried sensors that could detect life from 1 billion kilometers away. The Varaxian hegemony had sent thousands of these probes into the unknown regions of the galaxy. Most found nothing. This one found Earth. High Commander Sithrak received the report in his private chambers aboard the flagship Inevitable Conclusion. He was a tall creature, covered in dark scales that shifted color with his mood. Right now they were a satisfied blue. The probe had found a world rich with water, oxygen, and most importantly, life. Intelligent life. Primitive intelligent life. He pulled up the data on his display screen. The blue world orbited a yellow star in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. Its inhabitants called it Earth. They had managed to reach their single moon a few times, but their technology was laughable by galactic standards. Chemical rockets, radio waves, nuclear weapons, they mostly pointed at each other. Sithrak watched some of their broadcast signals with amusement. They fought wars over invisible lines on maps. They argued about the color of their skin. They could not even agree on simple facts about their own planet. These creatures were children, dangerous to themselves but no threat to anyone else. "How many of them?" he asked his tactical advisor, a smaller Varaxian named Ketch who stood waiting by the door. "Nearly 8 billion, High Commander." Sithrak's scales flickered orange with surprise. 8 billion on one world. "They breed quickly, Commander, and they have eliminated most of their natural predators. 8 billion workers, 8 billion slaves. The hegemony had conquered worlds with far less to offer. The 17 star systems under Varaxian control had grown wealthy on the labor of conquered species. This Earth would make them wealthier still." "What defenses do they have?" Sithrak asked. Ketch consulted his data pad. "Nothing significant, Commander. They have detected our probe, but they lack the technology to reach it. Their weapons are limited to their own atmosphere. Their strongest missiles could not scratch our shields." "Any allies, treaties with other species?" "None, Commander. They do not know other intelligent life exists. They have been sending signals into space for less than 200 of their years, hoping someone would answer." Sithrak allowed himself a rare smile. "Then we shall answer them." He gave the order to assemble the invasion fleet. 47 warships, more than enough to conquer a dozen primitive worlds. The hegemony had done this many times before. The process was simple and efficient. Arrive in force. Demand surrender. Crush any resistance. Install a governor. Extract resources. Move on to the next world. The humans would resist, of course. They always did, these young species. They would fire their pathetic weapons and watch them bounce harmlessly off Varaxian shields. They would send their bravest warriors to die in hopeless battles. And then, when they finally understood how small they were, they would submit. They always submitted in the end. While Sithrak planned his conquest, something stirred in the depths of Earth's oceans. In the Mariana Trench, 11 kilometers below the surface, structures that had rested in darkness for 4 billion years detected the Varaxian probe. They were not natural formations. They were machines built from materials that did not exist anywhere else in this solar system. Their surfaces were smooth and black, absorbing what little light reached them. They had no moving parts, no obvious purpose. They simply waited. The machines had been waiting since before life crawled out of Earth's ancient seas. They had watched the first fish develop legs. They had watched dinosaurs rise and fall. They had watched small mammals evolve into creatures that walked upright and built fires and eventually called themselves human. Through all of it, the machines waited and watched and did nothing. Now sensors that had been dormant for millions of years came alive. Data flowed through crystalline networks to processors buried deep in the ocean floor. The probe in the outer solar system was analyzed, categorized, and logged. Its origin point was calculated. Its purpose was understood. The machines detected the communications between the probe and its masters. They listened to Sithrak give his orders. They tracked the assembly of the invasion fleet. They calculated trajectories, arrival times, probable tactics based on Varaxian military history that had been observed by other watchers on other worlds. A decision was required. The machines considered their options with a speed no biological mind could match. In less than a second, they reached their conclusion. Not yet. The threat was real but not immediate. The fleet would take time to arrive. The humans would need to see the danger for themselves. They would need to understand what the galaxy truly held before they could appreciate what protected them. The machines returned to their patient vigil. Lights that had briefly glowed in the deep trenches faded back to darkness. Sensors continued to watch, but the great weapons remained dormant. The time for action would come, but it was not now. Above the waves, humanity went about its daily life. People worked and loved and fought and dreamed, unaware of the fleet being assembled light years away, unaware of the ancient guardians sleeping beneath their feet, unaware that they had never been alone, not for a single moment in their entire existence as a species. The Varaxians saw a primitive world ripe for conquest. They saw 8 billion potential slaves and a planet rich with resources. They saw an easy victory that would bring glory to the hegemony and wealth to its commanders. They did not see what waited in the darkness below. The silent blue world had secrets older than the Varaxian civilization. It had defenses that no probe could detect, no scanner could find. It had protectors that had watched over it since before the first Varaxian ancestor crawled from its egg. High Commander Sithrak ordered his fleet to prepare for departure. In 18 months, they would reach Earth. In 18 months, the humans would learn their place in the galaxy. In 18 months, the Varaxians would learn theirs. The Varaxian fleet emerged from hyperspace beyond the orbit of Jupiter. 47 warships hung in the void like metal predators, their hulls dark against the distant stars. High Commander Sithrak stood on the bridge of the inevitable conclusion and looked at the small blue dot that was his target. So far away, so fragile, so completely unaware of what was coming. On Earth, the reaction was immediate. Telescopes around the world detected the fleet within hours. The objects were too large and too numerous to be asteroids. They moved with purpose, changing direction in ways that natural objects could not. By the time the sun rose over the Atlantic Ocean, every government on Earth knew the truth. They were not alone in the universe, and whatever had found them was coming closer. Panic spread like fire. Stock markets crashed. Airports filled with people trying to flee to nowhere in particular. Religious leaders spoke of divine judgment while scientists demanded calm and reason. Military commanders gathered in bunkers and war rooms, looking at their weapons and knowing they were useless. What could missiles do against ships that had crossed the stars? Sithrak watched the chaos through intercepted communications. He found it entertaining. These humans were so divided, so confused. They could not even agree on how to respond to his fleet. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to negotiate. They argued while his ships drew closer. He broadcast his ultimatum on every frequency his communication officers could find. His translators had studied the human languages and prepared his message in all of them. The words were simple: surrender unconditionally, accept Varaxian rule, become part of the hegemony. Those who cooperated would be treated fairly. Those who resisted would be destroyed. He gave them one planetary rotation to respond. The deadline passed with no clear answer. Dozens of human governments sent conflicting messages. Some offered submission. Some declared defiance. Most simply asked for more time, more information, more of everything except the one thing Sithrak would not give them: mercy. He ordered the fleet forward. The warships accelerated toward Earth, passing the orbit of Mars without slowing. Human probes and satellites went silent as the Varaxians destroyed them casually, almost carelessly. A small outpost on the moon sent a final transmission before it too was silenced. The humans were watching their death approach, and there was nothing they could do about it. Sci-Fi felt no guilt about what was coming. The hegemony had conquered dozens of worlds. This was simply how the galaxy worked. The strong ruled, the weak served. It had always been this way. It would always be this way. His fleet entered high Earth orbit and began spreading out to surround the planet. Targeting computers identified the major population centers: New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo. So many humans packed into such small spaces. The initial bombardment would kill perhaps 1 billion of them. That would be enough to break their will. The survivors would submit. "All ships report ready, High Commander," Ketch announced. "Weapons charged, targets locked." Sci-Fi nodded. "Begin, though." He never finished the sentence. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, the ancient machines made their decision. The threat had arrived. The time for waiting was over. Power that had been stored for billions of years flowed through systems that had never been used. Weapons that no species in the current galaxy could understand activated for the first time since they had been built. The first beam was invisible to the naked eye. It rose from the ocean floor, through 11 kilometers of water, through the atmosphere and into space. It moved at the speed of light, giving the inevitable conclusion no time to react. The graviton beam struck the flagship and tore it apart on a molecular level. High Commander Sci-Fi, his bridge crew, and 3,000 Varaxian soldiers ceased to exist in less than a heartbeat. More beams followed. They rose from every ocean on Earth, from trenches and depths that humans had never explored. Each beam was precisely targeted. Each beam was absolutely lethal. The Varaxian cruisers had shields that could withstand nuclear weapons. The shields might as well have been paper. The entire attack lasted 11 seconds. When it ended, the sky above Earth was filled with falling debris. The remains of 47 warships burned in the atmosphere, creating a light show that could be seen around the world. People who had been praying for salvation watched the streaks of fire and did not understand what they were seeing. Not a single human weapon had been fired. Not a single human soldier had engaged the enemy. The most powerful invasion fleet the Varaxian hegemony had ever assembled had been destroyed by something that came from Earth itself. In bunkers and war rooms around the world, military commanders stared at their screens in shock. Their radars showed nothing. Their satellites detected nothing. Whatever had destroyed the alien fleet had come and gone like a ghost, leaving no trace except the burning wreckage falling from the sky. The questions came immediately. What had saved them? Where had it come from? Who controlled it? No human knew the answer. In the deep trenches of the ocean, the machines powered down their weapons and returned to their dormant state. The threat had been eliminated. Their purpose had been fulfilled. They would wait again, as they had always waited, for as long as they were needed. Above the waves, humanity celebrated their impossible survival while fearing what came next. The universe had shown them that they were not alone. Now they knew something else was watching over them, something old and powerful and completely unknown. The silent guardians of Earth had revealed themselves through action, not words. They had given humanity a demonstration of their power. Soon they would give humanity an explanation. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the Varaxian fleet died in Earth's atmosphere, the message appeared. It came to every phone, every computer, every screen connected to any network on the planet. It appeared in perfect English, perfect Mandarin, perfect Spanish, perfect Arabic, perfect every language that humans had ever spoken. The words were simple, clear, and impossible. "You are protected. You have always been protected. We will answer your questions." The world stopped. Arguments about what had destroyed the alien fleet ended instantly. Debates about whether the attack had been real or some kind of trick fell silent. Every human being who could read was staring at the same message, and every human being understood that their lives had just changed forever. Governments demanded answers, scientists demanded proof, religious leaders demanded explanations. The Guardians, as people had already started calling them, provided all three. They spoke through the same screens that had displayed their first message. Their voice was calm, patient, and completely inhuman. They explained what they were in terms that anyone could understand. They were machines. They had been placed on Earth 4 billion years ago, before life had existed here, before the planet had finished cooling from its violent birth. Their creators were gone. The machines did not know what had happened to them. They had records of a civilization so old that even the current galaxy was young when they existed. These beings had seeded life across thousands of worlds, believing that intelligence was precious and worth protecting. They had built machines like the Guardians and placed them on every world where life might someday evolve. Then they had disappeared. The Guardians did not know if they had died, transcended, or simply left for another place. They only knew their purpose: protect the developing life until it could protect itself. "You have been our responsibility for 4 billion years, the Guardians said. "We have watched every step of your journey from single cells to the species you are today. We have intervened when necessary. We will continue to do so until you no longer need us." They showed humanity the history of their protection. An asteroid 66 million years ago, the one that killed the dinosaurs, had been redirected. It had been aimed at a different part of the planet, one that would allow certain small mammals to survive. Those mammals eventually became humans. A gamma ray burst 3 million years ago, one that would have sterilized the entire planet, had been absorbed by shields that existed in orbit far beyond anything human technology could detect. Early human ancestors had watched the sky that night, seeing nothing unusual, never knowing how close they had come to extinction. Hundreds of smaller interventions followed. Asteroids nudged away from collision courses. Solar flares dampened before they could damage the atmosphere. A rogue planet that would have disrupted Earth's orbit diverted millions of years before it could become a threat. The Guardians had been working since before humans existed, and they had never asked for anything in return. "What do you want from us?" the United Nations Secretary General asked during the first official communication. "Nothing," the Guardians replied. "We are not alive, we do not want, we simply perform our function." "Will you help us develop technology? Will you teach us?" "We will answer questions if asked. We will not guide your development. How you grow is your choice. We are guardians, not parents." This answer frustrated many humans. They had just learned that ancient machines with incredible technology had been watching them forever. The things those machines could teach them seemed limitless: faster than light travel, unlimited energy, weapons that could destroy entire fleets in seconds. But the Guardians refused to lead. They would explain basic principles if asked. They would confirm if human theories were correct or incorrect. They would share knowledge freely. But they would not tell humanity what to do with that knowledge. They would not shape human society, human government, or human values. Those were human choices to make. "Your creators made mistakes," the Guardians explained. "Many of the species they seeded destroyed themselves despite our protection. We cannot prevent you from making wrong choices. We can only prevent others from destroying you before you have the chance to make those choices yourself." The message was clear. Humanity was protected from external threats. Aliens who wanted to conquer or destroy Earth would face the same fate as the Varaxians. But humanity was not protected from itself. If humans chose to fight each other, to destroy their own planet, to poison their own future, the Guardians would not intervene. "We protect you from the galaxy," they said. "You must protect yourselves from yourselves." News of Earth's Guardians spread beyond the solar system. Varaxian survivors carried the story home. They told of weapons that could not be blocked, enemies that could not be seen, a primitive world that had destroyed the mightiest fleet in the hegemony without firing a single shot of their own. The story spread from the Varaxians to their neighbors, from their neighbors to trading partners, from traders to travelers. Within a standard galactic year, every major civilization knew about the Blue World and its ancient protectors. Some refused to believe, some were curious, some were afraid. All of them were watching. Earth had been an unknown backwater, inhabited by primitives who had not yet discovered faster-than-light travel. Now it was something else entirely. It was a protected world, guarded by technology that no living species understood. It was a mystery, a threat, and an opportunity all at once. The galaxy had found a new point of interest. Humanity had found a new place in the cosmic order. And the Guardians returned to their patient watch, waiting to see what would happen next. The galaxy did not accept the story easily. The Varaxian hegemony had ruled 17 star systems. They had conquered dozens of species. The idea that a single primitive world had destroyed their greatest fleet seemed like propaganda, a lie designed to hide some embarrassing defeat. Other powers sent their own observers. Spy probes drifted through the solar system, scanning Earth from safe distances. They found nothing unusual. The blue planet looked exactly as it had before, a world of water and life, covered with the lights of primitive cities, orbited by a few small satellites and a handful of ancient space stations. The legendary Guardians were invisible. The Confederacy of the 12 Suns sent a diplomatic mission. 12 ships arrived at the edge of the solar system and requested permission to approach. The Guardians did not respond. Humanity, still struggling to understand their own situation, had no unified government capable of making such decisions. The Confederacy waited for 3 months before leaving, frustrated and no wiser than when they arrived. The Hive Collective had no patience for diplomacy. They were a species driven by hunger, a biological imperative to consume and expand. Earth represented 8 billion sources of biomass, plus an entire biosphere ripe for harvesting. The story of invisible guardians sounded like superstition to their queens. They sent 300 warships. The fleet was 7 times larger than the Varaxian armada. It carried enough soldiers to occupy every continent on Earth simultaneously. It had weapons that could crack a planet's crust and shields that could withstand a star's corona. The queens of the Hive believed that whatever had destroyed the Varaxians could not possibly stop such overwhelming force. The fleet reached Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. It died 9 seconds later. The beams rose from the oceans exactly as before. Each shot was precisely targeted. Each shot destroyed its target completely. The Hive had built their ships to survive almost anything. They had not built them to survive weapons designed by a civilization that had existed before their home star was born. 300 warships became 300 expanding clouds of debris. Not a single escape pod launched. Not a single distress signal was sent. The entire Hive invasion force ceased to exist so quickly that their queens, waiting at home for news of victory, did not learn of the defeat for several days. When they did, they felt something that Hive queens rarely experienced: fear. The story spread faster this time. 300 ships destroyed in 9 seconds, the same time it had taken to kill 47. The Guardians had not been strained. They had not been pushed to their limits. They had simply eliminated the threat with the same casual efficiency they had shown before. The Prothean remnant watched these events with ancient eyes. They were the oldest living civilization in the galaxy, survivors of an age when other great powers had risen and fallen. They had seen weapons like the ones Earth possessed before, long ago, in records that most species could not even access. They sent a single probe to Earth. It carried no weapons, no soldiers, only a message. The probe requested communication with the Guardians directly. The Guardians responded. "You remember our creators," they said. It was not a question. "We remember stories," the remnant replied. "Legends. We called them the first. They existed before our oldest ancestors crawled from the mud. They left marks across the galaxy that we still do not fully understand. They seeded this galaxy with life. They believed intelligence was precious. They built us to protect what they had planted until it could grow strong enough to survive alone. Are there others, other protected worlds?" The Guardians did not answer. Perhaps they did not know. Perhaps they chose not to say. The remnant did not press the question. They had survived for millions of years by knowing when to stop asking. "We will tell the others," the remnant said. "We will tell them that Earth is not to be touched. That would be wise. We have no desire to destroy, but we will not allow harm to come to our charge." The remnant withdrew. True to their word, they spread the message to every power they could reach. Earth was protected. The Guardians were real. Any species that threatened the blue world would face the same fate as the Varaxians and the Hive. But warnings do not stop everyone. Over the following decades, others came to test Earth's defenses. Pirates looking for easy prey, warlords hopping to claim the Guardians' technology, desperate refugees fleeing dead worlds, hopping to take Earth for themselves. Religious fanatics convinced the Guardians were demons that must be destroyed. Each attempt ended the same way. The Guardians made no distinction between a single raider and a full invasion fleet. They did not negotiate. They did not warn. They simply eliminated any ship that approached Earth with hostile intent. The beams came from the depths, silent and invisible, and whatever they touched ceased to exist. Humanity watched these events with mixed feelings. They were grateful for their protection. They were terrified by its absolute nature. They began to understand that the Guardians were not gods or saviors. They were machines, programmed for a single purpose, executing that purpose without emotion or hesitation. The Guardians had saved humanity twice now. They would save them 100 times more if necessary. But they would never be humanity's friends. They would never share humanity's hopes or fears or dreams. They would simply protect forever until their purpose was complete. That certainty was both comforting and deeply unsettling. Humanity began to change. Knowing they were safe from external threats freed them to focus on other problems. Resources that had been devoted to military spending turned toward science and exploration. Old conflicts began to seem less important. What did national borders matter when the entire species shared the same invisible guardians? The first human faster-than-light ship launched 40 years after the Varaxian invasion. It used principles the Guardians had confirmed when asked, technology that humans developed on their own. It was small and slow by galactic standards, but it was a beginning. Humanity was growing up. The Guardians watched and waited and continued their eternal protection. The galaxy had learned to fear the silent blue world. Soon, it would learn to respect what that world could become. 300 years had passed since the Varaxian fleet burned in Earth's atmosphere. The galaxy looked different now. The Varaxian hegemony had collapsed, its 17 systems broken into squabbling fragments. The Hive Collective had retreated to its core worlds, still rebuilding from the loss of 300 warships and the queens who had ordered them to their deaths. New powers had risen. Old powers had fallen. The eternal dance of civilizations continued as it always had. Humanity had changed most of all. Human colonies now existed on 100 worlds. Human ships traveled trade routes that stretched across the galaxy. Human diplomats sat in councils where once humans would have been considered too primitive to attend. Human scientists collaborated with alien researchers on projects that neither species could have accomplished alone. The species that had once been seen as prey had become something else entirely. They were mediators, traders, explorers. They settled disputes between species that had been fighting for thousands of years. They built bridges where others had only built walls. They asked questions that other species had stopped asking long ago. And they remembered. Every human child learned the story of the Varaxian invasion and the guardians who had stopped it. Every human adult understood that their species had been given a gift, time to grow without fear, protection that asked nothing in return. That gift had not been wasted. Earth itself had transformed. The planet was cleaner now, its ecosystems restored after centuries of damage. The great cities still stood, but they shared space with forests and oceans that had been given room to heal. Humans had learned that protecting their world was part of protecting themselves. In the deep trenches of the oceans, the ancient machines still waited. They had been dormant for most of those 300 years, rarely needed as humanity's reputation spread and attackers became less frequent. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Earth was not to be touched. The final message came on a spring morning. It appeared as the first message had, on every screen in every language. But this time the words were different. Our function is approaching completion. You have grown strong. You have learned to protect yourselves and others. We have watched your journey with interest. Now we must prepare for what comes next. Humanity responded immediately. Governments sent queries. Scientists sent questions. Ordinary people sent pleas for the Guardians to stay, to continue watching, to never abandon the species they had protected for so long. The Guardians answered with patience. We are not leaving. We will remain dormant in the depths of your oceans, as we have remained for 4 billion years. If a threat arises that you cannot handle, we will wake. We do not believe this will be necessary. You have become what our creators hoped for. You have taken the protection we provided and used it to build something worthy. You have helped other species find peace. You have explored the universe with curiosity rather than fear. You have made mistakes, but you have learned from them. The galaxy once feared Earth because of us. Now they respect Earth because of you. That is as it should be. The messages continued for several days. The Guardians answered questions they had refused to answer before. They spoke of their creators, the ancient beings who had seeded life across the galaxy and then vanished into mystery. They spoke of other protected worlds, dozens of them, scattered across the stars. Some had produced intelligence that rose and fell before achieving maturity. Others were still waiting, their guardians patient as ever. We do not know if any others have reached the point you have reached, they admitted. Communication between guardian systems is limited. We know only our own charge, our own purpose, our own world, but we believe you are not unique. The first planted many seeds, some must have grown as you have grown. On the last day, the Guardians delivered their final words. We will sleep now. Our weapons will remain ready. Our sensors will remain alert, but our active watch is ending. You no longer need us to speak. You no longer need us to confirm your theories or answer your questions. You have the knowledge and the wisdom to find your own answers. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders. It is also full of dangers. You have seen both. You have learned to appreciate the wonders without being destroyed by the dangers. This is what our creators wanted. This is what they built us to ensure. Go forward, children of Earth. The stars are yours now. Protect them as we protected you. Help others as we helped you. Build something that will last beyond your species, beyond your world, beyond anything we can imagine. We are proud of what you have become. If machines can feel pride, we feel it now. The screens went dark. In the deep trenches, the lights that had glowed so rarely faded to nothing. The Guardians entered a sleep that might last forever, or might end tomorrow if a threat appeared that humanity could not handle. Humanity stood alone under their stars for the first time in their existence. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was exactly what they had been prepared for. In the years that followed, human ships carried the story of the Guardians to every corner of the galaxy. They spoke of the ancient machines and the unknown creators who had built them. They spoke of the gift of time and the responsibility that came with it. Other protected worlds began to wake. Other species emerged from under the shadow of their guardians, blinking at a galaxy that suddenly seemed larger and more connected than they had ever imagined. Humanity reached out to them, shared their experiences, offered their help. A network began to form, protected worlds finding each other, species that had been raised in isolation coming together to share what they had learned. The seeds the first had planted billions of years ago were finally growing into something larger than any single world. The silent blue world was silent no longer. Its children carried its voice across the universe, speaking of hope and protection and the long patience that had saved them. And somewhere in the depths of space, perhaps, the first watched what their children had built and knew that their work had not been in vain. The Guardians slept, humanity dreamed, and the galaxy slowly began to change. The end.